Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. Gardeners unearth gold coins tied to Henry VIII. Let's explore. Fascinating history here in this article from the Smithsonian Magazine. I was first alerted to this by Gary Croft and Meteor Man. Very interesting indeed. You know how I like to cover lost treasure found after hundreds of years, even thousands of years. And this is no exception from this very interesting story. How gardeners have unearthed these coins inscribed with the initials of Henry VIII's first 3 wives. And just goes to show you that the history steeped in the United Kingdom, as this find is one of more than 47,000 recorded by the UK's Portable Antiquities Scheme in 2020. Look at that. This family in southern England found the trove of 64 coins while gardening there. Fascinating. In 1526, Henry VIII and his chief advisor, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, reformed England's coinage in hopes of regulating the kingdom's economy. As part of the project, the Tudor king introduced new denominations, gold crowns, with an unexpected feature: the initials of his queen consort, Catherine Aragon. Fascinating. 7 years later, when Henry divorced Catherine to marry Anne Boleyn, the royal mint issued a new set of crowns inscribed with the letter A. 3 years after that, when Henry had Anne beheaded on trumped-up charges of adultery, incest, witchcraft, and conspiring to kill him, the mint produced yet another gold coin, this time dedicated to the monarch's latest queen, Jane Seymour. Though Harry married 3 more times, his later wives, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and Catherine Parr, never appeared on the kingdom's currency. Perhaps a wise decision, considering the difficulty of keeping up with the ever-shifting cast of queens. This spring, 4 such rare Tudor tokens turned up in the New Forest area of southern England, where a British family, weeding its garden during COVID-19 lockdown, unearthed a trove of 64 medieval coins, per statement from the British Museum's Portable Antiquities Scheme, which is responsible for tracking the English and Welsh public's archaeological finds. The collection includes 63 gold coins and 1 silver coin. How's that for a gold to silver ratio? And they're dated between the late 15th and early 16th centuries. There you go. So here we have the queens in question here. We have Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, and Jane Seymour. Very good. All right. They were out turning up the soil, and all of a sudden, these coins popped out of the ground, miraculously, Ian Richardson, the museum's treasure registrar, tells Guardian's Mark Brown. It is quite a shocking find for them and very interesting for us. In total, the trove spans the reigns of 5 monarchs: Edward IV, Edward V, Richard III, Henry VII, and Henry VIII. At the time of their burial, around 1540, the coins were worth 24 pounds, or 14,000, almost 18,500 dollars today. A great deal of money, certainly more than the annual wages of the average person, says Barry Cook, a curator of medieval and early modern coins at the museum, to The Guardian. The majority of the coins are angels depicting St. Michael slaying a dragon. The gold crowns bearing the royal's initials, meanwhile, feature the Tudor rose and shield of arms. Researchers are unsure whether the coin's owner buried them all at once or made regular deposits over time. And John Naylor, a coin expert at the University of Oxford's Ashmolean Museum, posits that a wealthy merchant or clergy member buried the hoard in response to Henry's dissolution of monasteries. Some churches did try to hide their wealth, hoping they would be able to keep it from the long term, keep it in the long term, which is what Naylor told The Guardian here. Here we can see, and there we can, it's kind of hard to make out, but you can certainly see the size of it. Pretty big coins, very thin, and you can see shield there and the person holding a sword, and it appears to be below there's the Tudor rose, and trying to make out the dragon there, but pretty detailed for back then. As Ben Johnsons explains for Historic UK, Henry, who'd broken from the Catholic Church in 1534 to wed Anne, ruthlessly dissolved the kingdom's monasteries as part of England's Protestant Reformation. Aided by advisor Thomas Cromwell, the king spent the late 1530s and 40s shutting down houses of worship, seizing their land and wealth, and engaging in iconoclastic destruction. In doing so, he both eliminated symbols of papacy and filled his dwindling coffers with funds from the church's treasures. And just goes to show you that when the state, obviously the church was part of the state back then, but when they are pitted against one another, and the government, essentially in this case the crown, seeks to dismantle and take your wealth, well, you bury it. And that is one thing that happened here. I think it's a lesson for all of us, in a sense. This is why we have gold and silver. We do it to set our wealth outside of the financial system, or of any portion where it can be garnished or taken easily, because it can still be taken if they know you have it, and you keep it in a place that it can be accessed easily. And in this case, well, the church buried it. And for folks like us, well, we either put it in safes or we store it off site. In some places, and some people decide to store it out of the country. There are vaults where you can pay to have your gold and silver stored literally in a different nation, if you are concerned about potential seizure, not only from the government, but also from your fellow man around you. And that's something that I have done sort of, in a sense, in a different way. I believe it's very wise to store your gold and silver outside of your immediate location. And why is that? Well, mainly because of burglaries, burglars or people who, if they've by some chance know where you live, then they're not going to find anything there, nothing of substance. You keep the majority of your wealth spread out in different locations, and then by friends or family, specifically somebody who you trust, that maybe not necessarily could be tied to you so easily. Like, for instance, you wouldn't store it at your brother's house, for instance. You may find another friend or relative who's not necessarily one that you speak of too often, but yet somebody you can trust implicitly to be able to store your precious metals. I think that is a very wise thing to do, and that way you're avoiding storage fees and the like, and you can get to it easily if you need to. But most of the case, you find a way to be able to secure yourself in that regard. That's equivalent to essentially burying your treasure today. Some people still decide to bury their treasure. Some people find very clever ways to store it inside their homes. Cybercurtain Twitcher posted a video outlining many of those measures, which I think is invaluable. But yes, indeed, definitely very interesting. And that is a lesson to learn here about how that can occur. What did they do? Well, they buried these gold and one silver coin. And very interesting indeed. The article continues, from Coinage magazine in 2018, R.W. Julian noted that the 1526 currency overhaul marked Henry's first experiment with debasement. Another lesson to learn what governments do. Is like what the Federal Reserve is doing. They're taking a fiat currency and devaluing it even further. There's no debasing because our currency has already been debased completely, save for the copper that's in our coins, and that's going to change soon too, as well, as Silver Wolverine has pointed out. Or the practice of lowering coins' worth but maintaining their face value by increasing the percentage of everyday metals mixed in with precious metals like gold or silver. Officials used the extra gold and silver to mint additional coins, theoretically making more funds available, but in practice sparking widespread inflation. Towards the end of his reign, Henry embarked on a similar economic venture, replacing coins' precious metals content with a cheaper base metal, to such an extent that the policy was later dubbed the Great Debasement. Wow, there you go. Per a 2011 journal article by scholar Stephen Deng, the king, who had already exhausted the bounteous resources he had acquired from the dissolution of the monasteries, hoped to exploit England's coinage to fund military campaigns in France, Scotland, and Ireland. Following Henry's death in 1547, his son, Edward VI, continued the practice, which only came to an end in 1551. The Tudor coins are among more than 47,000 archaeological finds made in England and Wales this year alone, the British Museum said on Wednesday. And many of it probably is similar stories of gardeners and folks who have extra time in their hands from the pandemic lockdowns to be able to scur the countryside, so to speak. And this is probably why we've seen a boom in this type of things. Other key discoveries included a collection of 50 apartheid-era South African gold coins, a medieval mount featuring a white boar, the personal emblem of Richard III, and a copper Roman furniture fitting. Officials reported that COVID-19 lockdowns led to an uptick in these finds, as I mentioned, and many pandemic-worn Brits seeking respite from in their gardens. In fact, we're going to take a look at some of these other photos here. We can see here is the medieval mount with the personal emblem of Richard III there. And wow, that is one mean-looking boar for sure. And then here is the find in these tins of 70s era South African Krugerrands. Wow. In tubes there, hidden in these jars, a modern day version of what we had seen in the past. Look at that. Pretty wild to see those Krugerrands all there, and those tubes found, and those tubes there, and buried in those cans. Fascinating indeed. You can see how they have been, those cans have been, eroded away. But the gold, being in the tubes as well, has held up very, very well, as is always the case. In fact, when you look back and see here, these coins are gold, and they've held up very, very well. Because gold does not react. It does not react to the elements. So there you go, a fascinating story indeed. Thanks again to Media Man and Gary Croft for sending this along to me. Post your thoughts below. We'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.